Yesterday, Keir Starmer announced that the UK defence budget would increase to 2.5% of GDP by 2027 and 3% by the end of Parliament. However, a lot of political journalists have been disingenuous. So let's look at the history of the UK defence budget. In 1947, the UK defence budget was around 16% of GDP, and this was due to the Second World War and demobilisation. And by 1950, it drops to around that 6% mark and then goes up to 11.2% in 1952 due to the Korean War. And in the 1950s, it slowly declines from there. And during this period, Britain's not investing in the Marshall Plan properly. They're mainly spending it on welfare and nationalisation of the railways and other key industries. By the early 1960s, the defence budget was around 7% of GDP, and by the end of the decade, it was around 5.4% of GDP. And this is due to big decolonisation efforts and also British withdrawal from east of Suez. During the 1970s, the defence budget is around 5.5% per year on average. But in the 1970s, you've got a lot of turmoil, you've got miners' strikes, you've got the oil crisis, you've got the 3-day working week. Britain is in turmoil, but the defence budget is fairly stable. When we go into the 1980s, it raises a bit due to the Falklands War, and then slowly declines from the Falklands War, again to around 4% in the early 1990s. And this is a big issue because this is mainly all being spent on the welfare budget, mainly due to NHS and other measures. And then in the 1990s, we get the dividend payment. We get the peace dividend, and by 1997 the defence budget is around 3% of GDP and slowly drops after that. And the peace dividend, we tend to think you'd be invested in new industries, helping in welfare, but a lot of it was wasted. Some obviously went on welfare and did a great deal for Britain, but a lot of it wasn't invested in the right industries and massive deindustrialisation happened, so Britain didn't really benefit from this peace dividend at all. Since around the 2010s, the UK defence budget has been around 2.1% to around 2.4% of GDP. However, this is not really true because dodgy accounting is due to Conservative governments and also partially Labour now, basically making it like the defence budget is bigger than it is because they're pushing other costs from other departments into the defence budget to make it look like we're spending more on defence. When we're really not, it just makes them look good in a political sense.